assaulting the narrative, destroying their lives, unearthing the truth. I want the truth! This is The Truth with John Gordon.
Well, welcome everybody, and what a difference a day makes. I woke up on top of the world this morning. We did it. Donald Trump did it. MAGA did it. The American people did it. I have to tell you, I was really worried. You know I was worried. I told you I was worried the whole time. Why would I be worried? What could possibly go wrong? There were, and I will tell you, I was wrong. I was wrong. I was expecting an October surprise. I was expecting election interference of epic mammoth proportions. Now, I was right. There was an October surprise, but it wasn't what I was suspecting. The October surprise was that Kamala Harris would self-destruct and her campaign would implode. What was also a surprise is that in the aftermath, she actually got over 200 electoral votes. Trump never faltered. He ran the most incredible campaign of the ages. It was the best campaign I have ever witnessed anybody running for any elective office whatsoever. They covered all the bases. They had poll watchers. They had elections lawyers. They had a process in place. They had a rapid response team. They had Turning Point USA ballot chasers. President Trump talked about policy. He told you exactly what he thought on everything. Close the borders, lower the crime, improve the economy, peace abroad. I mean, he hit all the buttons and he wooed Hispanics and blacks, Asians, gays, straights, Christians, Jews, Catholics. He assembled a coalition like we've never seen. He went into the lion's den and campaigned in Brooklyn and held a rally in Madison Square Garden, which hadn't been done since Bill Clinton did when he ran for president. This campaign, ladies and gentlemen, was one for the ages. I'm not easily impressed. I am overwhelmed. And it's not just because he won. I said it before we knew the results. I said it earlier this week that I thought it was a phenomenal campaign that he had waged and that Susie Wiles and Chris Lasavidas deserved a great deal of credit. My friend Corey Lewandowski was recruited to come back onto the campaign a few months ago. And, you know, they I don't know how big their organization is. Hundreds of people worked on this campaign. The digital campaign, the media campaign, the rallies, the iconic moments that he gave us. But Trump has taken us on an unbelievable ride since 2015 when he arrived on the political stage and he came down the golden escalator to announce that he was running for president. And then he was elected president, to even his own surprise. People who know him and were with him said that nobody was more surprised that he had won than he was. So then he did a phenomenal job as president. He brought us the greatest economy of our lifetime, the least amount of unemployment, the highest employment of minorities, including blacks. He tackled a problem that we had never witnessed before, which was a worldwide pandemic that killed millions of Americans, that resulted in a vaccine being rushed to market. That's a subject for someone else for another day. And then America's gratitude, not the American people, but the Washington establishment. And I still want to get to the bottom of it. There are several things that I'm going to talk about today at the end of the monologue that I hope that Trump will tackle. And revealing America's secrets should be number one. But he was a victim of a stolen election, and then he protested on the ellipse in Washington. Over 1 million people were there, and a large number of those people went to the Capitol, which was the beginning of the J6 fiasco that brought us the terrible death of Ashley Babbitt and the curious person known as Ray Epps, an American secret. We need the truth. So when he was unsuccessful in holding up the certification of the election, which the media misportrays as his attempt to overturn the election. It was not an attempt to overturn the election. It was an attempt to call a timeout to get to the bottom of what happened in the election. That's what my perception is. A very dejected Donald Trump left the White House, boarded Marine One for Andrews Air Force Base, and took his last flight as the 45th President of the United States on Air Force One, arriving in West Palm Beach, where he was greeted by his Secret Service detail that drove him to Mar-a-Lago, where he spent the next 4 years planning and working and defending an onslaught of prosecutions.
The defendant, Donald J. Trump, is guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree.
This is a scam. There's a rigged trial.
To conceal a scheme to corrupt the 2016 election.
If they can do this to me, they can do this to anyone.
This is a completely unprecedented case. The United States has never seen a former or current president be charged with a crime, be convicted of a crime, or be sentenced for a crime. It's unheard of for a former president to go to jail.
Fake prosecutions, phony prosecutions, illegal prosecutions, illegitimate prosecutions with fake and phony corrupt judges. Mershon, Ingron, Letitia James, and Alvin Bragg, and Fannie Willis. Just a bunch of sick people that were more concerned about their lust for power than the future of the country. And then we start to turn the corner. 18 months ago, Trump declared that he would be a candidate for President of the United States.
And I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Summoning friends and supporters to Mar-a-Lago. It was a very happy occasion, followed by an intense run for the White House. A run that involved rallies all over the country. We talked about Brooklyn. He went to Nevada. He went to California, Georgia, Texas, Florida. He went to Cuban restaurants. He went to Hispanic restaurants. He went to wrestling matches. And then he went on the interview circuit with all the YouTubers, including Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan. He went on Gutfeld. He sat for an interview with Tyrus. Do you know Tyrus? He's the guy on Gutfeld that used to be a wrestler. He is one smart guy. I hope to get him on the truth before too long. Then we witnessed a horrible day in America's history when an attempt on Trump's life occurred in Butler, Pennsylvania, July the 13th, 2024, by Thomas Matthew Crooks, so we are told. I still want to know about Matthew Urich, an American secret. And then there was a second attempt right here in West Palm Beach, just 3 miles from where I'm sitting, at the Trump International Golf Course. More questions and answers on that one as well. The assassin is believed to have had ties with the CIA. Maxwell Urich is believed to have had ties with the CIA. What does Maxwell Urich and the West Palm Beach assassin have in common? They both fought in the Ukraine. I don't know whether they fought. They were in the theater, ostensibly fighting, and they both had ties to the CIA. America's secrets. They need to come out. The answers, the truth, need to be provided. And then we have the iconic image of Donald Trump serving French fries at McDonald's. Obviously, just sticking it to Kamala Harris, who said that she had worked at McDonald's as a teenager, except they have no record of her working there. Donald Trump has worked at McDonald's longer than Kamala Harris did. And then the iconic photograph of Trump driving the garbage truck after the President of the United States referred to him and his supporters as garbage. So last night at 2 o'clock in the morning, I watched as President Trump was declared the winner in the election. He shortly thereafter took the stage, greeting his supporters and campaign staff. Earlier that afternoon, Kamala Harris went to the Democratic National Committee offices and to thank the workers there. And she ended the campaign in a way that was fitting to the way that she waged the campaign. She was talking on the cell phone saying, "Hey, how you doing? Have you voted yet? Oh, you did? Thank you." And then she raises the phone to the applause of the worker. And when she holds it up, she wasn't on the phone at all. She was holding up a picture app. It was fake. It was a lie. And it was congruent with the way that she waged her entire campaign, no different than Biden did. We don't really have to talk about that much longer. They've got a mere 3 months left. How much more damage can they do? 2 months left, actually. Yeah. How much damage can they do in 2 months? Well, just know full well, I'll guarantee you that Trump is working as we speak, the morning after, to end the war in Ukraine. I will guarantee you that he is over there at Mar-a-Lago right now, working to resolve the war in the Middle East. I will guarantee you that he is putting his transition team in place and that he is working to get our economy back on the rails, that he is working to control the out of control federal spending, to reduce the budget, to empower Elon Musk to go find efficiency in government. Musk said he can take $2 trillion out of the federal budget. Folks, if Donald Trump can stay well, if he can learn from the mistakes of his first term, which I'm sure he will, which he himself acknowledges, I believe that we have got 4 years of some of the greatest 4 years ahead of us. God bless each of you. God bless America. And God, please look over our leader. Give him safety. Give him wisdom. Give him strength. Give him the ability to bring this country together. He promised he would last night. And I believe he's going to give it everything he's got. And now, the American people, you and I, we have to behave in ways that support President Trump's vision of a unified America. Now we're going to have an interview from a phenomenal individual. Be sure and stay tuned. That's up next. I want you to know how grateful I am to each one of our listeners and viewers of our live stream. We really don't take this airtime for granted. It is such an honor and a privilege to be able to come to you each week with our insights into the news of the day. As I'm fond of saying, we watch the news so you don't have to. We also would like to encourage our radio listeners to go to rumble.com, youtube.com, and getter.com, search for John Gordon Truth, and subscribe to our channel. That little act of kindness on your part would go so far because it would help us expand our reach. And for a limited time only, if you will subscribe to our channel and then email me at johngordontruth@gmail.com, we will put you in a raffle for this once-in-a-lifetime Trump hat signed by none other than Rudy Giuliani.
Wow.
And that's the truth, and thank you for your consideration. It's my pleasure to welcome Bill Walton to The Truth today. Bill is a retired executive on Wall Street. He was actually the chairman of Allied Capital. He is now devoting his life to public service. He too has a podcast that is doing quite well, and he is also engaged in the political arena, having been a participant in the creation of at least a chapter of Project 2025. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to meet you in person. or on screen.
Did you think that we would get through the election without cheating?
Well, I'm still not certain that we know the election. Earlier this week, I don't think we're going to get through the election without cheating. I think the cheating is baked in the cake. We've got massive dollars flowing into influencing it. We've got from the Tides Foundation and from Arabella, and there's even something called the Chinese Progressive Association. And these people have thousands of pop-up organizations which are intended to influence election results, and they can move it by 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. So if the election's close, that sort of thing wins.
Well, for our listeners and our viewers, we are pre-recording this program for airing this Saturday, actually on Election Day. So we do not know what the outcome of the election is. But as our listeners know, I've been involved in election integrity now for 3 years. And we already see evidence of cheating around the nation. We just don't know the extent of the cheating. We will know by the time this broadcast airs. But Bill, tell us a little bit about your activism and where you're spending your time these days in addition to the Bill Walton Show.
The most fun I've had in life is private equity, and my company was essentially a publicly traded private equity fund, and we were quite successful. Of course, then there was a little thing called 2008, 2009, which caused the market to melt down and sort of hurt our balance sheet, but we got through it. Anyway, what I'm doing now with political action is I'm friends with Ed Meese, and he got me involved with the conservative, what do we call it, CAP, Conservative Action Committee, a group of political activists who meet every Wednesday in Washington, and that sort of led one thing to another. I joined the board of American Enterprise Institute and Heritage Foundation and some others, and now I'm vice chairman of CPAC, which is, Matt Schlapp's the chairman, and we've been quite active in this election. In fact, working on overseeing mail-in ballot boxes, and with cameras and on-site observers, and have already uncovered some bogus ballots in 3 locations. So we're active in that. As you mentioned, I wrote a chapter on the infamous Project 2025 plan that was put together by Heritage. I also headed up in 2016, 17, the transition teams for about a third of the government, all the financial agencies, so got to know and write plans for Commerce, U.S. Treasury, the whole alphabet soup of agencies, and that was interesting. For a business guy, going from a world where you can see results, where you lose money or make money, being in politics I've found to be a little frustrating because it's hard to bring about the outcomes that need to be brought about.
So let's talk about Project 2025 for a moment. It is a product of the Heritage Foundation, which I understand you to say that you're a participant in, and you have been an author of a chapter in Project 2025. Tell our viewers and our listeners exactly how you would describe Project 2025.
Well, the problem you have with any new president is that you run for office, you spend 99% of your energies running for office, and then you win. And then the question is, remember that Robert Redford movie, The Candidate, where the last line was, "So what do I do now?" Well, the transition in Project 2025 is working to answer that question, what do I do now? And so Project 2025 is a whole of government plan, agency by agency by agency, to look at what legislation needs to be changed, what executive orders need to be mounted, what sort of agencies. In fact, the question is so many agencies, the question is whether they should even exist. The Education Department would probably be at the top of my list for an agency we don't need. So it's the thinking, and then the next step for Project 2025 was to identify suitable candidates to go into office. One of the problems Donald Trump had, and he'll admit this today, he said, I won the election in 2016, and I'd never even stayed overnight in Washington. And so I didn't know any of the players down there, and I think this time he's going to be better prepared. Now, as it turns out, Project 2025 did something we didn't do in 2016. They published it in a big book. And of course, the Democrats found something on every page two or three sentences or two or three words to hack away at, and it created a public publicity nightmare. And so Trump had never been involved in it, but even more, he did not want to be associated with it because it provided a lot of ammunition for the left.
Well, and he has disowned anything to do with Project 2025 as well. And can this federal bureaucracy be tamed? I mean, we have got just a mammoth federal budget year after year after year in massive deficit spending. And, you've heard, I've heard, we've all heard, bureaucrats' mindset is that the politicians are only here for 4 years. They're essentially there for a lifetime. And so if they don't like the policy, they just dig their heels in and resolve to outlast it.
Well, yeah, it's a problem because a president gets to appoint only a few people in each agency. The classic example, I mentioned, I was involved in the Treasury planning 2016 and 2024, and the Treasury includes the IRS, and the IRS commissioner has 85,000 or so employees, but there are only two political appointees: the treasurer and the commissioner and his chief legal counsel, general counsel. So you're not going to move 85,000 employee organization with two new people. Doesn't happen. So yeah, I mean the personnel barriers to change are enormous, and it's gotten more partisan and dug in, particularly since the Obama presidency. They spent 8 years digging in with the people that were highly partisan on the left, and Trump didn't really succeed in rooting enough for very many of those people out during his presidency. And then they came back in with a force during Biden-Kamala Harris presidency. And so for a typical human being, I think changing it is almost impossible. Now, the bet we're making is not that Trump necessarily is going to be the guy to make those changes, but he's got this interesting superhero weapon, Elon Musk, who has joined forces. He also, Vivek Ramaswamy is also a very smart guy with a private sector experience. And I think if you got enough disruptive change agents to take a look at government as a whole and see what we can do or not do, it'd be a huge fight, but it's a fight worth having.
Well, Donald Trump is no dummy either. And so I do agree that there's a tremendous amount of brain power. I am a huge Elon Musk fan, make no mistake about it. I admire him for his intellect, his accomplishments, but I also greatly admire him for his value system and his willingness to put his neck out to share his commonsensical beliefs. And I think that's more of what we need. To add to your point about the bureaucracy, there are two things that are very troubling to me. 90% of the bureaucracy I've read are Democrats, which is fine. I mean, it is and it isn't, as long as they're not activist Democrats pushing their ideology and their beliefs, their political beliefs, in the pursuit of performing their duties. But I think there does need to be balance. And I don't know how you unweight that scale, frankly. Obama obviously was successful, but the Hatch Act should be enforced. And I think there should be consequences when people in government don't follow the laws that they swear an oath to uphold. And to me, that is the biggest problem that we've got. The people that are in charge of protecting us are the very people who we have to worry the most about, like the FBI and the CIA and the other alphabet agencies. And I've spent a lot of time looking at the intelligence agencies. That's why I'm so excited that Bobby Kennedy will have a role in the administration. Hopefully by the time we air this broadcast, President Trump is the 47th. We won't know today, but as we're talking. But the intelligence agencies, I fear, is for all the good that they do and all the value they provide, I also believe have done a lot of damage to our country and eroded some of the constitutional protections that we depend on.
Well, do you think that Bobby Kennedy's uncle was assassinated by the intelligence services?
Bill, I would donate my last dollar on earth to help convince people, based on the reading that I've done for 65 years, that the CIA, Allen Dulles, killed Kennedy, that Hoover and Johnson covered it up, and the media are equally complicit. And I couldn't understand, how do you get a conspiracy of that magnitude and have people follow along with it? And then Musk buys Twitter, and we find out from Mike Taibbi, who did a deep dive through all the emails and all the paperwork, that our own FBI paid Twitter $3.4 million to censor and cancel people if they printed anything that went against the COVID vaccine narrative and the vaccine. I think that is a blight on our country that's got to stop.
Oh, I so agree. And I agree with your assessment about the assassination. I wonder why Trump didn't release that information during his first term. But given his relationship with Bobby, I think that's going to all get disclosed. And of course, that's one of the reasons they're fighting tooth and nail. I mean, they've got that sort of thing in the basement they want to hide. And they've also got the latest, of course, is the Epstein Island list. And there are all sorts of people that are throwing money at, like big money, $50, $100 million, because they fear that Trump might release the Epstein Island list. So we got a deep corruption that is going to take every molecule of our energy, ability, and intelligence to root out. But given the people Trump's assembling, I think we're on the same page, and I think everybody's willing to lend a hand to help make that happen.
So I've got a formula that's probably never going to happen, but to me would be the first bold step. Honest power brokers in Congress, both houses, have to author a bill that says we give every member of Congress amnesty and forgiveness for any crimes that they have committed that do not directly affect the health, safety, or well-being of a fellow human being. But if they have been photographed in compromising positions, or they have committed some terribly embarrassing act, but if it is not harmful to others, that we give them amnesty and protection, but that all the secrets, the Epstein files, the JFK files, the Benghazi files, you name the file, that they're all released. Trust the American people to deal with the horrible information that we're going to learn, put it out there for everybody, have a cleansing of America, a confession of our sins, and get back to an ethical and moral place in our country. Call me an idealist, call me I'm fantasizing, but something, somewhere on the continuum between doing nothing and doing what I'm suggesting has got to happen if we're ever going to get this country back on the rails, I think.
Have you ever heard of the Overton window?
I have, but I don't know what it is.
Well, it's basically the idea that change happens when people throw out a wild idea that everybody knows could never happen. And then they keep persisting, and then sometimes that idea comes a little closer to what people think, well, maybe we ought to. I think you ought to stick with it. I think it's a noble cause. Of course, Schiff is going to want not just absolution for past crimes, he's going to want absolution for future crimes. So the negotiation is going to be extremely interesting. But I would love to try to make that part of the public policy dialogue. That would really, and it also gets people talking about all the sins that actually got committed, which would be a healthy thing.
Well, and I think we've just got to come together as a nation and say, not there are 90 million Christians in America. That's a strong number, but it is not an overwhelming majority. But I think that we've got to find some commonality of belief where forgiveness is part of the equation, but that we've got to confess the sins and let the American people just see exactly what has occurred. And then we write laws and we come up with a code of honor that all Americans can subscribe to and all members of Congress can subscribe to. Like I would write the first commandment of the new world, of the new nation order, according to John, to be that we resolve that the truth will be the final determinant on all issues, and that we're not going to continue these untruthful lies and narratives, and that there really should be a penalty for people that knowingly lie. I ran for attorney general in Georgia, and I'd worked for 2.5 years on election integrity in Georgia. I have seen the evidence. I have seen the duplicate ballots. I have looked at the number of illegal registrations. I've looked at the number of people who were registered at homeless shelters and UPS stores. And we know from 2,000 Mules that there were thousands upon thousands upon thousands of ballots stuffed in drop boxes. And we have cell phone tracking that prove that certain individuals visited drop boxes hundreds of times in the weeks leading up to 2020. And then I take this information to journalists, to supposed journalists that I know are well educated, that one lady in particular, who is one of the top journalists at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, who lives next door to one of my best friends, who speaks very highly of her, but I took the information to her and she just glazed over like a deer in headlights and would not engage on the subject. And they continue to write that President Trump tried to overturn the 2020 election without any evidence. And it's just a damn lie. And it really upsets me that when they continue to write this time and time again, and, so they get Trump and they destroy our nation in the process. If we don't have a franchise, freedom of speech, and the Second Amendment and the other amendments in the Bill of Rights, I don't know what we've got as a free nation that stands as an example for the rest of the world.
Well, and that's exactly what's at stake in this election. Trump is the only guy that's going to even remotely bring that kind of to bear. And the thing, you mentioned Elon. The New York Times wrote yesterday, well, Elon's only backing Trump because he thinks he's going to get lots of government contracts and this, that. They've got a cynical, materialistic view of everyone and everything because that's how they think. And what I know about Elon, I've not met him in person. I've met a lot of people around him. He's for real. I mean, he's the real deal. He's, you say you're an idealist. He's really, I think I'm an idealist. He's got us all topped. He was on Tucker's show, and it was before they opened the formal hearing, and Elon said, if we don't win, I am, and I don't know whether your show is G-rated or not, but he said, I am effed. He said, this is.
Yeah, that would not go. That one would not go over with the FCC. But other than that, it's pretty much an open platform.
For real, and idealism is real, and I think it could be infectious. And Bobby Kennedy's an idealist, and you get a few more idealists around, and so all of a sudden that Overton window and your idea becomes pretty damned attractive. I mean, I'm all in. Let me know when you're going to set up a group to do that.
Well, I would like to, I look at everything on a continuum when I analyze a problem, and what I described to you would probably be at the far out reaches of the continuum. I think that you've got to come up with a pragmatic solution that people will embrace, but I don't think that it should include a seat at the table with Mike Pompeo, who I greatly admire on the one hand, but who talked Trump out of releasing the Kennedy files when he was director of the CIA and Trump was the 45th president. And they both acknowledge it. And Pompeo, I am told, I was not told this in confidence, but said to someone I know and respect that he did not feel like he had done enough while he was at the CIA to rid it of partisanship and bad actors.
Well, that's an understatement.
You really don't have to go very far, much further, to understand the way the CIA operates than to look at James Angleton's statement just prior to his death, that he was certain that he was going to share a place in Hades with his colleagues at the CIA. And, we need the CIA. There are legions of people who risk their lives and give everything they've got to protect us.
They fell into the moral relativism trap. I mean, that's one of the big diseases of the 20th and the 21st century is moral relativism, and that we're not really any better than the other guys. Well, look what how many people the Chinese have killed Chinese Communist Party have killed and are still killing. Look how many people Stalin killed, and the Ingleton was, I pronounced it wrong, was guilty of that same thing. They thought, well, they're bad, but we're bad too. And that is not the case. We need to be, America is an idea. America is one of the best ideas ever in terms of how men should organize themselves to govern each other. And we got to believe in that and stick with it. So, the Constitution was an ideal thing. That Constitution was way outside your Overton window when they put it in place. And we need to get back to that. I find myself in violent agreement with you. So,
well, thank you. And I'm glad to have found a new friend. I think that, the concept of moral authority is really, to me, a universal principle. And I don't think you have to be a Christian or a Muslim or Catholic or a Jew, whatever denomination, or an atheist and an agnostic. I think that a moral ground is innate in all of us. Now, some people aspire to it maybe to a higher degree than others. Maybe it's like the song from Camelot, the 7 deadly virtues, those ghastly little traps. Oh, no, my liege, they were not meant for me. Take courage. Now, there's a sport, an invitation to the state of rigor mort, and charity a noble yet. And if charity means giving, I give it to you, and fidelity is only for your mate. So
that's great. I got to look that up.
But it illustrates the point that I'm trying to make, that morality and goodness are we impose those on others, even if we don't impose them on ourselves. And I think that globally, that everybody wants everybody else to treat them morally and ethically. So, but the United States, I think, used to be a leader in that realm, and I think we've lost that authority. We've lost our moral authority. Every leader in the free world knows that the CIA killed Kennedy. It's no longer a secret. David Talbot's written a book. Roger Stone's written a book. Douglas wrote a book called The Unspeakable. Mark Lane, The Rush to Judgment. I mean, and then you have people like Bobby Kennedy, who was one of the most affected people on earth by the assassination of his uncle and his father. I mean, clearly has insights that none of us probably have. And he firmly concludes that the CIA killed his uncle and his dad. So it's got to be exposed. It's got to be stopped. Part of my Overton window would be that we try these people even in memoriam, and we punish them. But we start by ripping their names off the buildings that we have honored them by. If they have violated the Constitution and the laws of this country in a material, serious manner, they do not deserve to have their name on the side of a building. Take it off, or on a street corner, or in a library. Rip it off. That's the only part of our heritage that I would believe should be changed, should be dismantled.
Well, I so agree. And instead, they're toppling statues in Richmond, Virginia, of people who fought for their ideal. They lost, but we're in an upside down world, and they're renaming everything. But I don't know whether Dulles Airport's going to ever make that list, but it sounds like it should.
Well, I definitely think it should, but there's one little wrinkle in that makes it problematic. And I didn't know this until fairly recently, but Dulles Airport was actually named after John Foster Dulles, and not Allen Dulles, which creates a little bit of a problem. But I guarantee you, John Foster was probably knowledgeable of what happened, and so he was complicit by silence. Well, so you talked about eliminating the Department of Education. That's the most practical and the easiest one for people to agree to. All we do is take money from the states, send it to Washington, so they can send it back to the states and tell them how to spend their own money that they've sent up. Now, what in the world, who, other than the men and women who work in the IRS, would oppose going to a fair tax? To me, I cannot find a problem with a consumer tax. It encourages savings. It is a fair tax across the board. And you could impose graduated sales taxes, consumer taxes, if you will, based on one's income level. It would be complicated. It's not easy, but it'd be a heck of a lot easier than the Internal Revenue Service code as we know it today. And I think we could take care of the impact that it would have on people of lesser means. Have you thought about that? Do you have an opinion?
Well, I think it's a big idea. I think a fair tax is a good idea, but these things keep falling into the sewer of We're into the swamp of pragmatic horse trading here in Washington. And, the fear is you go for a fair tax based on consumption and you still end up with an income tax. There's another aspect of the income tax that people don't talk about, which is the privacy issue. If you think about it, we've given the IRS the power to learn all about our financial affairs, et cetera, et cetera. And we've lost much of our privacy. And now we've got them enacting this Corporate Transparency Act, which is going to require all small businesses in America to register with the Treasury's Financial Crimes Unit as if they're likely to commit a crime, further throwing a surveillance net over all of small business in America. So I think the fair tax is a fabulous idea, and getting rid of the income tax would get the governments out of our income and how we live our lives, and that would be a huge intended consequence of doing that.
Well, I would certainly be in favor of it. Steve Forbes could be recruited to come into the Trump administration and help continue to push that idea forward. And these problems are solvable, but I'm fond of the saying, if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always got. And I think that's the mode we're in right now. And I do have a solution for getting the special interest under control. And this is another idea that I would be so excited to see part of a plan. And it's simple. It is so simple, it defies logic. We just, once we get the fear taken out of the legislators, so they're not fearful of being embarrassed or run out of town on a rail because of some mistake they made when they had too much to drink one night or went to a freak out, we very simply put a cap on how much special interest can donate not only to campaigns, but also C4s. We rein it in, and simultaneously, we restore a federal income tax deduction to you and me and other people, other citizens who want to donate to political campaigns. And I think that would in very short order, balance the disparity. Because, I've looked at financial disclosures. I've looked at them for a number of candidates. The amount of money that the special interests donate to candidates is unbelievable. And I'm going down the list trying to find somebody I know, and they're all corporations or PACs or C4s. I mean, you just can't find Joe Blow and his wife Susie anymore. It's almost something of bygone years that people give to candidates. Now, I know there are exceptions, and you're an exception, I'm an exception, and there are a lot of people who do fulfill that civic duty, but so much money is disproportionately weighted by the special interest.
The trillions of dollars that flow through DC are obscene, and they get rewarded for that campaign money with that turn around and give it right back to them. The Inflation Reduction Act, which is really the Green New Deal for Democrats. I'm in the Virginia, Maryland area, and there are these huge mansions out in Potomac. I got to town 25 years ago. They were huge then, but you know what's happening now? They've become teardowns, and they're building even bigger mansions out there, and that all comes from those billions of dollars that have flowed through the government coffers. So it's a feeding trough, and it's obscene. And I'm with you on trying to limit money. I think, though, that's another one that we're really pushing the Overton window because, I don't see these cats changing their stripes.
Well, let's while we're dreaming, let's impose term limits, and that would be another way that we could do it.
But you got to put term limits on the staffers as well.
100%, and that's part of Trump's plan, or maybe it's Project 2025. I don't know. I haven't read Project 2025, but I'm gonna download it and delve into it. But Trump's plan is that you can only serve in one agency for a maximum of 10 years, and then you have to rotate out to another place. I can think of a lot of devilment that could continue to happen, and maybe even more cronyism would be encouraged by that than the way we've got it now. I don't know, but I'm down for trying anything that will restore this country to the greatness that it once was when I was a kid, and Andy of Mayberry and the wonderful world of Disney really was wonderful. Those are the days I yearn for.
Me too. We mentioned I got this phone call that's coming in. as we speak. Can we do a home and away or something like that? Maybe we'll get another show going with me.
Well, absolutely. Let's reconnect after the election. It's been a pleasure to have you, Bill. Bill Walton, a captain of industry, a movie producer, a philanthropist, and a civic activist. Thank you for coming on the show. Where can people find you?
Shares your dream. You can find me at the Bill Walton Show, and that'll lead you to everything else that I'm doing. This was great fun. I like you and your ideas, so let's do some more of this.
Well, thank you. And if you're ever down in West Palm Beach, give me a call, and we'll solve some of these problems over a cold beer or some clear liquid. Okay, good deal. Thank you.
All right, John, thanks.
Have a great day. Day makes. I am celebrating. Most of the country is celebrating. I know our listeners are celebrating, and as you know, for the last 2 years, I have said that we are up against, this is not a Republican versus Democratic challenge. This is a challenge of good versus evil. And that I felt and feel, and now I firmly believe, not like I didn't firmly believe before, but I'm doubling down on my belief that the 2024 election of Donald J. Trump is the result of Donald J. Trump's hard work, a lot of luck, but most of all, divine intervention. I have said continually that I felt in my heart that God is on our side because we're not the ones spreading lies. We're not the ones that are dismantling our country for our own greed and lust for power, but rather we're trying to make America great again. And I fervently believe that. It's incredible. It is phenomenal. And as you know, I had my concerns, I had my doubts as to whether we were going to be able to get it across the line. I firmly believe that there would be an October surprise. As I said at the beginning of the broadcast, the October surprise was that the Democrats self-imploded. Kamala Harris proved to be the horrible candidate she was in 2020, where she got less than 2% of the primary vote in the Democratic primary. And then in this go-around, she didn't receive any votes because they installed her as the Democratic nominee. And I think the American people reacted very negatively to that. So we have just made, over the last 2 years, incredible progress. I don't know whether the people in the Trump world listen to this broadcast or not. If they don't, they should, because I've called it. I'm not saying that immodestly or boastfully. I'm just telling you the truth. I said we need to get rid of the 3 M's, McDaniel, McCarthy, and McConnell. And we have. Kudos, President Trump. I know that Romney McDaniel was a close ally, and she was very instrumental in the 2016 victory. And I think she's probably a really nice person, but like too many people. She went to Washington. She got the big head, and I called for her removal as head of the RNC, along with her florist, manicurist, hairdresser, wardrobe consultant, and her pilots. And now they're all gone. Kudos. Kevin McCarthy promised one thing, gave us completely the opposite. Said he would not pass continuing resolutions. His first opportunity within a month to not pass a continuing resolution. And what did the Congress do? The same old, same old. So his name was being circulated for chief of staff. Thank God that they didn't give him the nod. It was quickly squashed, as well it should have been. And soon to be gone, Mitch McConnell. He was the other one we said, no more McConnell. He is king of the rhinos. And he's soon to be gone as the majority leader. Well, he is actually the minority leader, but we're soon to get a majority leader. And we've got some excellent choices. And unfortunately, who is not gone is Adam Schiff. That guy keeps coming back like a bad penny. And he won the Senate race in California, which is about all I need to know about California. If that doesn't say it all, I don't know what does. Can you hear that noise? I can hear them all the way in West Palm Beach from Washington, D.C. That noise you hear are shredders. Because we're about to set this country back on the right path. And the people who have worked so hard to dismantle and destroy our country, I guarantee you they're in their offices right now, shredding and whatever you do to hard drives. They got Hillary Clinton up there consulting with them how to smash a hard drive and cleanse a hard drive. They, as we speak, are destroying evidence in our nation's capital. I know it. I can feel it. I can hear it. It is happening right now. President Trump learned some very valuable lessons the hard way in his first term. He learned not to put his trust in people that he appointed to high office. You know who they are. He knows who they are. And he knows the selection process that he followed, which in hindsight was a flawed process. He listened to people he should not have listened to. And who were those people? Consummate swamp creatures. Like the then head of the RNC, who had a short stint in the Trump White House. Like Chris Christie. I think he's going to do commercials for, who's that? What's that diet that people go on? Jenny Craig. Yeah, I see Chris Christie having a future being a spokesman for Jenny Craig, because he sure as hell isn't going to have a role in government. You talk about somebody who shot himself in the kneecap and completely self-exploded. Representative Mike Rogers, he's in the U.S. House of Representatives from Alabama. His name is being circulated as Secretary of Defense. He currently serves on the House Armed Services Committee. A curious one to me, a former, not enemy of President Trump, but certainly a competitor. But they've since made up and they're playing nice. Senator Marco Rubio, who is being given credit today, along with Senator Scott, both from the great state of Florida. Rubio being circulated as Secretary of State, and then Governor Burgum of South Dakota being circulated as a possible Secretary of Energy. Well, President Trump is not waiting. He is swinging into action as we speak. Right now, he is in his office at Mar-a-Lago. He's already appointed Susie Wiles as his chief of staff. I know Mrs. Wiles. I have a history with Ms. Wiles. She is smart. She is experienced. She is Pat Summerall's daughter. And I guess you should add ruthless to the list. This is one tough lady, and she'll stab you in a New York second. And I know that from personal experience. Don't believe me? Ask Ron DeSantis. But that's why Trump likes her. Every president needs somebody to be the henchman, and he has found it in his loyalist, Susie Wiles, who, in spite of her mistreatment of me personally after I lost the AG's race in Georgia, I still like her. I still admire her. I wish her well. I think she'll do a great job for Trump in the White House, just as she has done the last 4 years as his chief of staff at Mar-a-Lago and in the 4 years that have intervened since he came home from Washington. The Ukraine war is already de-escalating, and conversations are taking place on how for Putin to gracefully exit the theater. The Middle East, there are talks of a ceasefire. And if you need to know any more, Hamas has sent a congratulatory note, I have read, to President-elect Trump. Now, one thing I'm going to say, and I'm a little unsure of myself on this, just because of all the noise surrounding them. But I've got to say, folks, that I think the Fed has done a miraculous job of saving this country from a severe and steep recession. 2 years ago, I came on this broadcast and I was talking about people like Ray Dalio, like the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, and some other really, really smart people that were forecasting a bubble that was about to burst. They were preaching doom and gloom. They cost me a lot of money because I deleveraged. I sold some stock. I started trying to get out of debt. And lo and behold, they were just flat out wrong. And all this government stimulus that occurred during COVID and post-COVID really helped prop up the economy. And you've got to sort of zoom out. You know, I have no regard or respect for Joe Biden. You know that. But if there's anything that he has done, I think that all the irrational, irresponsible spending has had an effect of keeping the economy going and avoiding what could have been a disastrous economy. But more to the point, I think you've got to give Jerome Powell a lot of credit. He has made the very tough, difficult decisions to raise interest rates, to fight inflation. We had inflation at 9%. We had unemployment at 4.3%. Our economy was getting off the rails, and in combination with Jerome Powell and our providing monetary policy and the Congress's fiscal policy, which I have real problems with on the latter. They went way overboard. Way overboard. They have put this company in dire straits with our ever-increasing $35 trillion debt. By 2028, the interest on the debt will be the largest line item in the federal budget, unless we are able to curb it. And that ushers in Elon Musk. You can't say anybody single-handedly handed Trump the victory. The only person who gets credit is Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who was a real estate developer and reality show host, became president of the United States and delivered us the best 4 years I've ever witnessed. I think that President Trump was the best president, unquestionably of my lifetime, one of the best in our country's history. But Elon Musk gets a lot of the credit, as does Susie Wiles and as does Chris Lasavitas. They were his campaign managers. So many people. Eric Trump, Donald Jr., Eric's wife, who became co-chair of the RNC. I mean, he put together, seriously, a Super Bowl team of champions running his campaign. But he was the GM, the coach, the quarterback. I mean, President Trump, for anybody that knows him, knows that he is hands-on, but he also selects the best people to put around him. It's the best run campaign I've ever seen. They touched all the buttons. They left no card unturned. And what they accomplished is remarkable. It is nothing short of remarkable, including obtaining the endorsement of Robert Kennedy Jr., which, if you listen to the program long enough, you know that I said, and I'm not bragging, I'm just reminding, I'm sorry, I can't help myself. But I said, if Donald Trump and Robert Kennedy Jr. could park their egos, they could be the most formidable team to clean up the federal government. And then Elon Musk, I tapped him way before anybody else talked about Elon Musk. For one reason, he's got 100 million followers on Twitter. There are a lot of people like me who are fanboys. I am a self-admitted fanboy of Elon Musk. I have never heard him say one thing that I was not in complete lockstep and agreement with. If anybody has helped preserve free speech in our country today, it is Elon Musk. So what did he do? Once he aligned with President Trump, they met over here in Mar-a-Lago. I think it was about 3 months ago. It wasn't very early on in the campaign, but they learned that they had a lot in common, and they forged a bond. And Elon Musk spent the last month campaigning in Pennsylvania and offering $1 million a day to anyone who would sign a petition upholding the Constitution of the United States and defending free speech. And then you've got Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania, who wanted to make a referral to the Attorney General for saying that Musk was conducting an illegal lottery. Well, that's complete and utter, because you didn't have to pay to be in the lottery. There was no bargain for exchange. There was no quid pro quo. All you had to do was swear an oath. You didn't have to swear an oath. You had to pledge support of our United States Constitution, and specifically the First Amendment. And Governor Shapiro, thank God they didn't pick him, because he probably would have helped Kamala Harris. But he wants to go after Musk for conducting an illegal lottery because he's asking people to validate free speech and the First Amendment? You've got to be kidding me. Well, if that doesn't tell you all you need to know about the communist, leftist, Democratic Party in this country, I don't know what more evidence you need. But Musk spent a solid month campaigning for President Trump in Pennsylvania, and by gosh, President Trump carried Pennsylvania, as he did most of the other battleground states, like Nevada, which was just awarded to President Clinton today. I guess it was Fox who said that Nevada was going to award its electoral votes to President Trump. So now we get to the point and the place where we get to govern. We've won the battle, and now we get to fly the American flag. We get to practice our religion. We get to honor our constitutional right to freedom of speech and to possess arms. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm calling on President Trump to establish the United States Government Office of Accountability. President Trump, draw a line in the sand and say, no more. There shall be no more violations of our Constitution and our federal laws because you're a bureaucrat and you can get away with it. No, sir. Kamala Harris wanted to turn the page. By God, we're going to help her turn the page. There needs to be a new day in Washington. No more willful violations of the federal law and breaches of our United States Constitution simply because you hold a sacred position in our federal government and you can flat out get away with it and cover it up. No, sir. No more. Draw a line. This country has lost its position on the world stage to be a moral leader in the world, particularly the Western world. We have to get it back. So I call on the president to establish this new department outside the Department of Justice, the United States Government Office of Accountability. For this office, I propose the head, either ceremonial or in real terms, to be Rudolph Giuliani, assisted by former Assistant Department of Justice Director Jeffrey Clark, with special appointees including Alan Dershowitz, Helena Bobbitt, and Bobby Kennedy Jr. These are warriors, they're fighters, they're ethical, they've been damaged, they deserve to be rehabilitated. Rehabilitated in the eyes of the nation. Now, I'm not talking about Dershowitz, Bobbitt, and Bobby Kennedy Jr. Well, Bobby Kennedy to some extent. I'm really talking about Giuliani and Jeffrey Clark. I know them. I don't know them well. We're not on speed dial, although I talked to them. They're two of the finest people I've ever known. Bar none, make no mistake about it. Rudy Giuliani is an American iconic hero. Jeffrey Clark, I know to be one of the most honest people I've ever met. He is a Christian. He can quote the Bible. He doesn't wear it on his sleeve, but when given the opportunity, he can speak conversantly about the Bible. He is a man of faith. He is a man of principle. He has been horribly mistreated. Alan Dershowitz, he's an honest broker. Helena Bobbitt, we saw in the trials in New York what she is capable of. And Bobby Kennedy Jr., who has been personally touched by gross, malicious, vengeful violations of the laws of our country and the laws of nature, the laws of man. This new Office of Accountability will immediately open parallel investigations into the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. We will conduct an in-depth investigation into the misdeeds and violations of our federal law by the Central Intelligence Agency for at least the last 10 years. Ditto for the FBI. Ditto for certain judges in our federal district courts and members of the Department of Justice who have abused their authority and abused the trust placed in them to conduct their political lawfare. Resigning is not an option for Jack Smith. I'm sorry. He's lied to the American people. He falsely, under oath, provided information to the federal district court. Letting him resign and go peacefully into the night is not an option. These judges, Mershon and Ingron, resigning, disbarment, public humiliation is not enough. They violated their oath of office. They engaged in political lawfare. It's obvious. Now, we need to go in. We need to start putting people under oath. We need to send in members of law enforcement to conduct investigations. If they are vindicated, I will be the first person to come on this radio show and tell you, like I did at the beginning of the show, I was wrong. There was no October surprise. I expected it. I predicted it. The only October surprise was that the Democrats and Kamala Harris and frickin' Tim Walz self-imploded. Congratulations. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for our country. But then we need to go and investigate, pull the layers back on Fani Willis and her lover. Who did they meet with in the White House? What was discussed? All the notes, all the memorandum, all the voicemails, all the text. Preserve the evidence, folks, because if you don't, the least you're going to be guilty of is destruction of evidence. Then we turn our attention to that wonderful J6 Commission. Yes, Speaker Pelosi, who failed to honor President Trump's request for National Guardsmen to protect the Capitol that day. We want to know who Ray Epps really is. I'd like to see his bank account and the deposits and who he was getting money from on January the 6th and in the days leading up to January the 6th. Adam Schiff, Liz Cheney, the entire J6 committee who have intentionally, maliciously destroyed the lives, literally destroyed the lives of over 300 people that have been rotting away in the DC jail because of their fake, phony, made up January 6th riot that they caused, that they had provocateurs in. Christopher Wray, you no longer get to use your defense of an ongoing investigation because you are now a target of the investigation. Your agency is now a target of an investigation to determine who in your department or contract people from the FBI were in that crowd on January the 6th and stoked the crowd and incited a riot. And if you don't know better, that is a violation of federal law. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for a cleansing of America. All the secrets need to come out. All of them. Merrick Garland, Christopher Wray, Director Cheadle. While we're at it, Ronald Rutrow and his gang of five at the Secret Service. They all need to be put under the spotlight and sunshine, brought in to cleanse this federal government and expose all the bad deeds. And while we're at it, let's have a little look behind the curtain into Brad Raffensperger and his entire office, who I believe, based on the evidence that I have seen, conspired to steal the 2020 election, along with the Fulton Board of Elections, including Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, who, ladies, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to give back the fake President's Citizens Award bestowed upon you by soon-to-be former President, illegitimate President Joe Biden. And I cannot wait to see Alejandro Mayorkas indicted and tried for perjury. All the many lies that he told to Congress. And while you're at it, let's put Anthony Fauci in the barrel. Let's get to the bottom, I mean really get to the bottom of how the COVID virus was unleashed on the world and how and who is responsible for killing 3 million Americans, and who and how was the vaccine developed, administered, who profited by it, and what knowledge, prior knowledge was there about the dangers, the inherent dangers of the COVID vaccine. Now, President Trump, I don't want to destroy this country. I'm not asking you to turn it into the turmoil that surely these things will provoke. but it has to be done. It has to be done not for retribution. I don't hate anybody. I'm not out to hurt anybody. I'm not out to ruin anybody's lives. But I am fully on board for accountability. And then after the trials and after their convictions, pardon them. I'd be fine with that. But don't you want to know whose cocaine was in the White House? Don't you want to know who had it, whose DNA was all over the little plastic wrapper that it came in? Inquiring minds want to know. But it's not gossip I'm interested in. There is no part of my personality that wants to see people exposed for the sake of embarrassing them and humiliating them. That's not the point. It's not the goal. The goal is to preserve this great country known as the United States of America, to return our country to the moral leader of the world. We demand to know the truth surrounding the attempted assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania. I demand to know, where is Maxwell Urich? Who is or was Maxwell Urich? We are entitled to know who pulled the trigger on top of the American Research Building. Was it Thomas Matthew Crooks? Was he assisted? Or did Maxwell Urich actually pull the trigger? The body of someone was cremated in an incredibly short 10 days immediately following the attempted assassination. While we're at it, I want to know the truth about the attempted assassination in West Palm Beach. What ties did Ryan Wesley Routh have to the CIA? What ties did Maxwell Urich have to the CIA? While we cleanse the federal government, which is going to be a painful, ugly process, but it has to happen. Sunshine is the best disinfectant of all. We need the secrets to come out. Meanwhile, we need to build. We need to build on our successes. All over the mainstream media today, yesterday, this week, the same talking heads that were out to get President Trump are talking about rebuilding the Democratic Party. Well, frankly, I could care less about the Democratic Party. Now, if they can rebuild it in an ethical, truthful way, I welcome them back. I welcome any legitimate person who is honest and cares about our country to have a place in American discourse to talk about policy, and we can debate what's right and what's in the best interest of our company and what isn't. But the Democratic Party, as we know it today, they're dying not a slow death. They are dying a rapid death because they stand for everything that this country stands for. They're opposed to everything this country stands for. Doing away with freedom of speech, taking our guns, lying to the American people, calling abortion a fertility issue, It's not about giving birth. It's about killing innocent unborn fetuses, of which we have killed 63 million. And they talk about democracy and President Trump having been a threat to democracy while they're killing democracy. They don't want you to have a place at the table. They don't want your opinion to be voiced. They don't want to follow the dictates of the Supreme Court that has ruled that the subject of abortion needs to be returned to the states where it belongs. What's the matter with that? Then every state gets to choose for themselves. I'm proud to live in Florida, where we have a very constrictive rule on abortion, perhaps too constrictive. There has to be a middle ground. There has to be compromise. There has to be common sense. But what I am most interested in today and going forward, while we work to correct the sins of the past and correct the ills of the past, I want to talk about building on the momentum that President Trump brought to our country last Tuesday. Do you know that New Jersey, that the Republicans reduced the margin to 11%? Same as in New York, where Trump lost by 23% in 2020. In California, Trump narrowed the margin to 10%. And in Massachusetts, for God's sakes, one of the most liberal states in the nation, the margin was 9%. These are phenomenal, wonderful signs of what is to come. But let's build on it. Do Michael Whatley, chair of the RNC, Laura Trump, do not wait for the next election cycle to begin. Go to work Monday morning, building on that momentum. Folks, New York, New Jersey, California, Massachusetts are in play. Go organize. Go get ballot chasers. Go do all the things that were masterfully done. Lots of credit to Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, and that entire organization for going out and actively recruiting legitimate ballots for people who couldn't get them to the polls. Now, as we wind it down, as I wind down, it's cathartic. It's helpful to vent. I haven't kept this bottled up in me. You know it. You've listened for the last 2 years. But it is very liberating to be able to come with the freedom, the newfound freedom that I feel today, to be able to come here and speak the truth. Now, in that vein, I received a very kind voicemail from someone just yesterday, and I asked for permission. He did not want his name nor voice included in the broadcast, but he did give me permission to read you the voicemail that he sent me. Here's the text. Gage, our producer, has graciously volunteered to read it. Gage?
I'm simply calling to congratulate you and to thank you for all you did to help the movement be successful and ensure that the word got out. There are so many people you spend a lot of time on your podcast, and it's very effective. And I just wanted to thank you and congratulate you for all your efforts.
Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate kind words that I've received from not a huge number of people, but enough to make me proud of the work that we've done here for the last 3 years, or 2.5 years, as we are embarking on our third year. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for tuning in, for giving me this platform, for coming back week in and week out to engage. And I appreciate your emails. You can email me, johngordontruth@gmail.com. That's johngordontruth@gmail.com. And if you really want to help, please go to our YouTube, Rumble, Getter channels and subscribe. We have gone from a just very few subscribers. Our subscriber base increased tenfold in the last 45 days. If we could repeat that in the next 45 days, we would reach that magical number where we move way up through the algorithm on YouTube, Rumble, and Getter. And that is my aspiration, to continue to be your voice, to continue to come and educate